It's time for the Financial Crisis Talk Center with Ken Gross and David Einstandig from Thav Gross.
Credit card debt is number one. I view it as financial cancer.
40% of your gross income is going to just pay the debt service. You got no chance of getting out.
I would give up my credit score to get rid of debt.
Here's your host, Ken Gross.
Welcome back to the Talk Center. This is segment 2 of a 2-part segment on truth or fiction. If you remember, in the last segment, I was told that I would confuse it with truth or dare, and of course I did. Welcome back, Brian Small or Frieda Bowden. How are you?
Great.
We're great today.
All right, now, before we go, we have a lot of remaining truth or fiction numbers to cover in this segment. But before we do that, I want to just kind of share an article that I thought was interesting on credit cards in terms of when can an issuer close your credit card account and what are the consequences. And here's what the article says. And by the way, we've talked about it before, last segment as well. Interesting sites to go to. This comes from creditcard.com, which happens to be a site that is supported by the credit card industry, but it has a lot of good news articles in there in the news section, so I frequently check it every week in terms of looking for new information.
You
That's
really,
not the one.
You really got to get a hobby.
That's not the one with all the cool commercials.
No.
Free.
Oh, I hate free credit card.
Oh,
I
dear
love
God.
that.
No singing in the studio here.
Oh, sorry.
No, you can sing. I've
Oh,
heard
okay.
him sing before. Don't sing.
Actually, on that topic, I hope I want to have time when we get to a house store. But we talked about houses, not a home, and I did a little bit of research on that with your assistance, by the way. But I don't want to get sidetracked. When can they close your account? First
Tuesday.
of all, the Credit Card Act of 2009, which had a lot of reforms to help support people in terms of the credit card industry, which has a lot of benefits, had nothing about this. There are no restrictions on them for canceling your credit card.
Wow.
In fact, under the terms of their agreement, it basically says anytime they want to cancel it, they're perfectly free to do it. Now,
Which
why
becomes
would
a
they do
problem. It is a problem.
Yes.
Because your credit score, if you are concerned about your credit score, is based in part on your available credit against the amount that you owe.
It's called your utilization ratio.
So if you have a credit card, say an American Express card like I used to have, and you get a letter from American Express that says, "Dear Mr. Small, we've noticed that you haven't utilized your card in the past X number of years, so for security reasons, we're closing your account." That was what happened to me in 2007.
And it's still happening. And the effect is this. American Express is a little bit of a different one because they don't always have a stated credit line amount.
Right.
But say you have a Bank of America or a Chase card with a $20,000 available credit and you have zero balance on it. Your utilization ratio comprises 30% of your FICO score. So that $20,000 of available credit helps support your score because you always want to have available credit of at least no more than a third of the available credit being used. 25% is considered more optimal. But all of a sudden they take away that 20,000 available. Suppose you only had 50,000 other. Suppose your other accounts you had 50,000 of available credit of which you were using 20,000 of it. Mm-hmm. Now, before you had 20%, 20 to 100,000. Now you've got 20 to 50,000. You've gone up to 40%.
And it's going to hurt your FICO
It's going to hurt your score. So, I mean, it's just an interesting point. So the moral of that story is, I mean, we're pretty much in favor in our mind of the less you have in the way of credit card debt, the better. But sometimes you want to watch the utilization, and if you're going to close an account, close your newest accounts, not your oldest accounts, because that's another 15% is your history. So the longer an account goes back, the better. And if you have a zero balance on it, you might want to use it every once in a while, pay it off at the end of the month, so it shows the activity and you don't get zapped away just because they decide to take it away because they get sick and tired of sending you statements when you're not paying them anything.
Also, be aware if you are doing something where you need credit, like you're buying a house or purchasing a car, don't take any dramatic actions with cancellation of credit cards at the time until you're done with that major transaction, because it can impact your ability to get approved for a mortgage.
All right. ready for our next ones?
Sure.
Let's go.
Okay. Our next one we will go with is...
If I don't file a tax return,
Go ahead. You say it.
the chances of IRS catching up with me are much less. True or false?
I'll answer that. That's false unless you're in a pine box. Sorry. The IRS is going to catch you. And
I'll add this much. It's going to take them a little bit longer to catch up with you. But it's
you know,
the government.
They will
They're
catch
going to
up.
catch up with you.
And you've got to be aware of the fact that most people, when they decide not to file a tax return, they're not doing it because they're trying to evade taxes. They look at their tax return, they've already had it prepared, and they say, oh my God, I owe money to the IRS. And they say, I won't file it.
Because if I don't file it, they won't know
know
about it, and then they won't send me any notices. But the problem is this.
There's a
Number one is
non-filing penalty
25%
Ouch.
and a
plus
non-payment
interest.
penalty.
Ouch.
That one you're
ouch.
going to get hit with if you don't pay anyway. But that extra 25% you don't need.
And non-filing is a crime.
And worse than this. And it's if you're a non-filer, it's not. We don't see people getting arrested every day for not filing their returns. But there is the chance that all of a sudden you have a number of years that are unfiled. When two revenue officers show up and flash badges, that means it's a criminal investigation and it's a really big problem. We have a rule called voluntary compliance. If you come to them before they come to you, then there's never a criminal prosecution for not filing. So
But if you don't
that
file-
says you got to deal with the problem.
You may end up in jail like Wesley Snipes.
Wesley, he just got out.
He did just
I
get
think
out.
he's going to
Was
do
it
another
for not
movie.
filing or was it unreported income?
No, it was for
Oh.
non-filing of his tax returns because he believed that he didn't have to.
What about Lauren
and non-reporting
Hill?
income.
Have you heard about that? Lauren Hill said that she didn't think she owed the federal government anything. The singer Lauren Hill from Fugees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you
There's lots
thank you
of-
for sharing that
Yeah,
because
there-
everyone knows I'm musically deficient.
You know, and I'm not sure about Wesley Snipes whether it was non-filing or non-reporting of income,
but
but at the
here's-
end of the day, he still went to jail.
Here's the
I know.
bigger point. Clients come in all the time, and we deal with these problems all the time, and it's not that big of a deal to resolve the problem. But the first thing that the client always says to me is sometimes they actually break down and they start crying because there's such an anxiety factor that they've been living with, sometimes for 3-4 years. All of a sudden, you don't file 1 year. Then the next
it
year
makes-
you're sitting there and you're going, oh, it's like that. You think it's a bigger problem than it is. So all of a sudden you're in 3 years, and then you're afraid to do something about it. You don't know who to turn to, and what happens is you end up losing sleep and worrying about it. And then when you realize that at the end, it's a simple problem to resolve. We'll be back.
No one ever thinks that a serious injury can happen to them, but it can, and it does. And it can happen to you. And when it does, you need a fighter in that courtroom for you. Call me, Ben Johnson. Automobile accident, police misconduct, medical malpractice, product liability. You know what you're up against, how hard it is to get answers. When all you want is justice, call me, Ben Johnson. Whatever your legal crisis, I will fight for you. Call me today.
I couldn't get out of the car. I couldn't run or exercise. I couldn't work.
Dr. Lewis Radin believes that pain shouldn't have to wait. His Spine Specialist of Michigan is a comprehensive center dedicated to helping you manage pain now. Expect the latest techniques and personalized care. Why suffer another minute?
He's the best. I tell people that he's the one that saved my life.
Make your appointment with Dr. Radin. Call 248-792-9496.
Don't let legal problems destroy your family or your life. Get the justice you deserve. I'm Sabrina Cronin of the Cronin Law Firm, and I'm here to make things right. My firm handles family law, business law, and even criminal law. We can handle all of your legal needs. So whatever you're facing, I'm here to get you justice. You can't afford not to call. Call 855-CRONIN-LAW today.
If you're retired and in a financial crisis, there is a way out.
It pains me when I see a retired couple exhaust their savings by paying credit card bills and for a home hopelessly underwater.
Thav Gross specializes in helping retired people in financial crisis.
You just can't keep paying until you're broke. You need to address the problem now.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
Going from hourly to salary seemed like a good career move, but now you're working 60 hours a week instead of 40, and you aren't getting paid any of that extra time. You're stuck, right? Wrong. You can be on salary and still be entitled to overtime. If you've been wrongly denied such pay, you may be entitled to that and more. Gold Star Law is here to help you through your employment law problem, whatever it is.
Gold Star Law, protecting employees' rights. Call 1-800-WAGES-10 for a free consultation today.
Carrying too much debt? Dump your debt. Call Thav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Thav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Welcome back. All right, so if you haven't filed your tax returns, it's not the end of the world. The remedy is you come in, we get the returns filed. Sometimes people have lost the information. We estimate if we have to. We just get them filed. Then if there's a liability, you get yourself on a payment plan. If the liability is under $50,000, you can automatically qualify for an installment payment with the IRS. If it's more than $50,000, then we have to do a little work to negotiate an installment payment based upon what you can afford. And there's also remedies that we can look at from the standpoint of offers and compromises and things like that. But on this one item, the idea of not filing the return because you don't have the money is, to be candid, stupid. And you shouldn't do that. You need to address the problem and resolve it. Even though it's stupid, I can tell you it happens millions of times and you're not alone. It's nothing necessarily to be embarrassed about, but what's stupid is not solving the problem. All right, now, next one.
Well, you ought to jump then to taxes are not dischargeable in bankruptcy. True
I don't want to
false?
jump to that one because I want to go to the next one on the list.
No, we should do that because we should continue to
all
discuss the IRS.
right.
And one
Do
of
it
the key,
quickly.
the key component here is if you file your taxes timely, taxes are dischargeable in bankruptcy.
Income taxes.
Income taxes, that's correct. So what you want to do is make sure you always file. If you don't have the money, you don't have the money. But file to give yourself that opportunity if you need to down the road, if you can't solve your tax solution problem through a payment plan or an offer and compromise or other relief that's available.
All right, good point. Good point. I want to be little public service announcements, not really public service announcements, but we have a seminar coming up. You want to check dates and times, go to our websites, thavgross.com, financialcrisistalkcenter.com, or FC Talk Center if you want to type less number of characters onto the keyboard. It's got the dates and the times. We cover all current issues, tax issues, loan modifications, short sales, which are still very viable right now and getting approved and still a good way to exit a house underwater or rental property underwater, how to get rid of credit card debt, when bankruptcy works, when bankruptcy doesn't work. I want to thank our sponsors, Cronin Law Firm, Van Johnson Law, Gold Star Law, our newest sponsors, Samasco Law, and Double Action Shooting Range and Gun Shop. Appreciate the support. Next one, now that we've covered the bankruptcy one, which is, you had a good point there, Brian, good point. This is one people don't know, I think. Here's the question, here's the statement, because this is truth or fiction. You are better off paying the IRS on your taxes than the state of Michigan.
Well, the answer to that is probably false. It depends on the amounts and everything else, but the state of Michigan is a vicious collector. And there's almost nothing you can do from the standpoint of working it out to pay less. The state will go after you, and they'll actually try to sell your minor children.
Well, let me put it this way, and I'm saying this in jest because we work with the state, and there's a lot of good people that work for the state in the.
Yeah, but they have a directive from the government
in the Department of Treasury, in the department. But when it comes to their position on taxes, they're the terrorists of the tax world compared to the United States government. I'm saying that I'm saying it in jest, but they are very difficult. Now I'll tell you why. The state penalties are more severe than the federal penalties. And in the federal system and in the state system, we both have a situation where if you get penalized, if you can show, quote unquote, just cause, there's a basis in both the state law and in the IRS code to waive the penalty. The problem is when we have a penalty and we try and get it waived in the federal level, we write a letter, we support it as to what the just cause was, family hardship, medical reasons, all the things that are sympathetic that would give rise to that kind of a situation. And oftentimes the penalty is abated, is waived. The state, no matter what the circumstances, they virtually never waive the penalty. They respond to you quickly. No. They send you a one-paragraph letter saying, we've received your request for an abatement of the penalty.
Thank you, but no.
Grounds are not sufficient. No. End of story. So in normal circumstances, you're better off if you have the liability to pay the state first, because on the federal system, we know we can get an installment agreement up to $50,000. We know there's grounds to sometimes get penalties
and you can
waived.
get an installment agreement even above $50,000. There's just a lot more work that happens to go into it.
At the state level, you can get an installment payment too, but it's usually only for 2 years. You got to pay the tax off in 2
and
years.
the feds, you can do it over as much as 72 months.
72 months. So it's a much. I mean, it's not great to have to owe either of them money. But the question is when you come in and you have limited resources, you're better off paying the state off first typically. I wouldn't make these decisions on your own. You should come in, you should have someone knowledgeable about the issue reviewing it, but I'm just kind of throwing that out there because most people would think the exact opposite in terms of what the game plan is. All right, number 6 we've covered because the answer was the question was taxes are not dischargeable in bankruptcy, so we'll move on to number 7. This is it. You can settle your tax liability for pennies on the dollar. Just ask Max from Blue Whatever. Truth or fiction?
Okay. There is a program through the federal government called an offer and compromise. The offer and compromise is designed to allow you to repay what you can afford based on 1 year's income or 2 years' income over a limited period of time. However, the fact that those commercials talk about, I paid $1,200 for my $200,000 tax liability, that is nonsense. It doesn't really happen. There's one guy out there that it happened to one time 50 years ago.
Well, I can tell you.
50 years ago?
Here's what it comes down to. It's
maybe
a bona fide. The federal government has a program called Offer and Compromise, and they actually have made the rules easier in the last year than they used to be. But it still doesn't work for most people. And the reason is this. Let's say you have a retirement account. They're going to take the retirement account first. Let's suppose you have $100,000 of equity in your home. They're going to want to start off the $100,000. Let's say you owed them $250,000 in taxes. If you have nothing, then it can work. We'll take a break. We'll finish up on Offer and Compromise, and then we'll have some more truth.
You like your job. What you don't like is the way your boss has been treating you. He's making comments about how you look instead of your work, and he's been touching you inappropriately. If you complain, is he allowed to fire you? Absolutely not. Unwelcome sexual comments, advances in contact are illegal in the workplace. Make him pay. Gold Star Law is here to help you through your employment law problem, whatever it is.
Gold Star Law, protecting employees' rights. Call 1-800-WAGES-10 for a free consultation today.
Every family has the family meeting, and we all know what that means. Dad's got dementia. What are we going to do? What's the care plan that the family has in place? Usually they don't, or they struggle with a care plan. When you go home tonight and you talk to your tax person and you talk to your financial person, say, what's the plan that you have in place? And as soon as they don't give you an answer, give me a call, because I can do it for you.
Financially strapped? Do you want to save your home?
It's all about preserving future income. Bankruptcy is one option. When it's right, it's the least costly, most effective way to save your home, eliminate a second mortgage, and wipe out credit card debt. But you need to address the problem now.
We help people with bankruptcy. Call the experts.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Double Action Shooting Center and Gun Shop. For the largest selection of guns, accessories, and ammunition, Double Action is your only pro gun shop. And now you can train with the best in our basic CCW course with the most comprehensive curriculum, the best resources, and most accomplished staff. Don't be fooled by cheap imitations. Double Action is the only place to get your CCW or renewal. Double Action. We're on DeQuinder and Madison Heights.
Welcome back. All right, so we're talking about this offer and compromise idea on the federal taxes, which exists, but it's the TV commercials by these national firms want you to believe. First of all, they want you to call them. So they're going to lead with something that is enticing. And what could be more than there's nothing more enticing when it comes to, if you owe taxes, to be told that you're not going to have to pay them or you're going to pay pennies on the dollar. The other thing that's enticing is the word free. So most commercial advertisers use free or some phenomenal discount. It doesn't really exist there except in limited circumstances. If you have no assets, no equity in a home, no retirement, no cash in bank, then you're in a good position to get an offer and compromise because you can then discount the amount of the debt based upon your current income level. And in that situation, we can get a good deal.
Now,
but to think that it's out there for everyone is misleading, and that's why all these tax companies have been busted by the FTC over the course of the last couple of years.
However, something really important to note. If you tried to do an offer and compromise years ago and were told that you didn't qualify because you had dissipated assets and that you had too much money in the bank, just because you tried and failed then doesn't mean that the standards, which have been eased up since May of this year, May of 2012, don't allow you to try again. So don't think that no meant no.
No means no? No?
Well, no means no most times, but no doesn't necessarily mean no when it comes to the IRS.
In certain circumstances, in modern day times, no clearly means no, I would have to say.
Yes. However,
and we won't even go back to when we were Utes as to whether no meant no.
However, when it comes to the IRS, again, if you were once denied an offer and compromise, and it was before May of last year, May of 2012, you should probably consider looking at that program again.
And just so you threw out a word out there, dissipated assets. With that, it's a term used by the IRS, and it means if you get rid of your assets within anywhere up to 6 years of the time you're filing the offer and compromise for the purpose of getting rid of them so that you can say you don't have anything, they look back at that and bring them back into the analysis when they evaluate whether your offer will be approved or not. That's why people have their own concept of self-help. Brian runs into it all the time where they walk into the office to get a bankruptcy consult. Before they've even walked in, they've started transferring assets to their kids and their uncles and their aunts, and that all that does is ruin their chance of filing a bankruptcy. You don't make the decisions ahead of time. You get the advice and you plan, and then if you can do something, you do it. If not, you work around it. But if you make a transfer, you can't take it back.
That's can't undo the bad act, no matter what. It's already done. And that exposes lots of people to getting sued.
Let's go on to our next truth or fiction. If you miss a credit card payment, the creditor can levy against your bank account.
Right away. They can, can't they? Can they just go right into the bank account and take the money that you owe them, and therefore they get paid?
They have an automatic vacuum cleaner button that they push on their desk and says, Mrs. Jones in Skokie, Illinois. Boop, and take all the money from her account.
It's made by Dyson, that vacuum.
Yeah.
Elfrida's looking like she's scared. Can they really do that?
There's a common misconception that people believe that they can, and the answer is the creditor cannot go into your credit card, into your bank account, and sweep your account to pay the bill. Unless, there is an unless, credit unions differ from banks.
Oh.
If you don't pay your credit union bill, your credit union has a set-off right that a bank doesn't have.
And even And a basic rule is this. If you have credit card debt with the same bank that you're banking with and you're in a situation where you can't afford to make the credit card payment, I tell people, open a new bank account. Don't allow the risk of it happening. But the rules are they can't just they can't come to your house and take your property. In order for a creditor to pursue a claim against you, they must actually sue you, serve you with court papers that is a lawsuit in the district court or the circuit court where in the county that you live in, and then you have an opportunity to defend the case. But there's the next problem, is this one. When you're served with court papers, it is not essential to take action. True or false?
Doesn't it just get taken care of all by itself? You don't do anything, and then they can't come after you because you didn't respond.
Bibbidi boppity boo.
You absolutely have to respond. You have 21 days to respond to a complaint in Michigan if you're served with a complaint
in person,
in order to file an answer.
28 days if you're served by mail.
You need to get an attorney and you need to file a response. Maybe bankruptcy is the right solution for you, but then you need to get in and talk with an attorney to make that analysis. If you ignore it, a judgment will issue against you. The judgment issues against you, then they can go and start garnishing your bank account and levying on your wages, which is a serious problem that you don't want to subject yourself to. I want to go to my last one because we're running out of time. Number 10. We should have had the David Letterman music. If your credit score never falls below 700 your entire life, you are guaranteed to go to heaven.
You actually get a text message from the Almighty.
I'm waiting to see the credit card industry or the credit industry put that out there in a commercial.
You know what? I just have to go with true. I mean, it's clearly obvious that if you have excellent credit, you're guaranteed to streamline yourself straight to heaven.
I mean, thou shalt never let your credit score fall below 700. Isn't that the 11th commandment?
Well, it lets you it continues with my theme. It lets you borrow enough money to buy that pine box.
I have a different.
I don't really like.
I have
pine.
a different 11th commandment. Thou shalt preserve your future income for you and your family. That should be the statement that you live by, not by fear of letting your credit score drop.
So in other words, credit score be darned. I'm not going to say the other. I'm not sure whether we're allowed to say
No,
so
you're not.
We'll just go credit score be darned.
I want to remind people we got seminars coming up. Go to our website, stavgross.com, financialcrisistalkcenter.com. You can sign up there. We cover all the current topics that you're going through from the standpoint of financial problems.
For the people that don't have...
Quiet, Brian. I want to thank our sponsors.
Say they could call us, too.
Cronin Law Firm, Venn Johnson, good point. Venn Johnson Law, Gold Star Law, newest sponsors, Simasco Law, Double Action, Shooting Range. You can call us to sign up for that seminar. What's the number, Brian?
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.